Live. I'm Kim Kautzer and I am with WriteShop. I am here today to share with those of you who have tweens, young 12s, all the way up to high school, and talk to you about WriteShop I and II. A lot of you have been asking to peek inside the books, and that's one of the things you've really wanted to see at the Top Picks Curriculum Fair. So I am going to show you, kind of take you on a tour of WriteShop I and II and tell you a little bit about it, show you what the pages look like, and talk to you about the schedules and all that fun stuff, because I know that when you're teaching your high schoolers, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming and nerve-wracking, because you're thinking, they're almost there, and what do I do? And especially if you haven't been teaching all the way up through the ranks, because if you've been teaching from the time they are young, you kind of grow with them. And if you just suddenly start homeschooling in junior high or high school, it can feel a little scary. And I want to take that fear away for you, because writing is one of the scariest subjects that parents tell me they face when they're teaching their kids. And it doesn't have to be. We can help you to feel confident and successful at teaching writing to your teens, okay? So let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kim. I am the founder of WriteShop and the author of the oldest series, the ones we're talking about today, WriteShop I and II. They came into being because I had a very reluctant son. He was a struggling writer, a struggling learner in general, and so we started this co-op class so that we could help our own boys, my friend Debbie and I, learn how to write better, because our girls didn't have any trouble with that. Hi, Michelle. And so it was just one of those things where we just thought, we need to try something different, because what's working for the girls isn't working for the boys. We need to start from scratch. So we gathered together a group of 16 kids and started teaching them from what we thought was going to be a really great little program. And I'm talking back in the 90s where there wasn't much out there. And lo and behold, it was not working and we were stuck. We had to come up with something from scratch. And that's how WriteShop was born. One lesson at a time. What did we want to see in a writing program? What was frustrating to us in other programs that we wished could be a little different and more user-friendly? So that's kind of how WriteShop came to be, and it became a user-friendly curriculum because we needed that as moms, as homeschool moms, who never planned to write a curriculum. And over the years, thousands and thousands of families have used WriteShop I and II to teach their kids, and I am here to encourage you that you can do it. So my struggling son, he learned to write. That was the foundation for him. It wasn't the be-all that ends all, because there was much to be done after we finished WriteShop I and II, but it was a great foundation for him, and he went on after his struggles as a younger student to university, and eventually on to higher level grad school and post-grad. So he did great. He was a reluctant learner with some learning glitches, and WriteShop is a great fit for all your learners. It's for junior high and high school students. It is not graded. You'll see our student books, and I'm sorry these are backwards. I still can't figure out how to reverse my phone. I've tried every which way. So we'll just do our best. So WriteShop I, the blue level, WriteShop II, the red level, and these are the student books. And so when you get your student book, it looks like this, all bound up like a perfect bound book, but it's actually blank page, not blank, no, you don't want blank pages, pages that you remove from the cover, and then you cut the cover apart, insert it into a binder, and put the pages inside the binder. Okay, so that's what you do. Easy, easy, easy. for both of those books. The teacher's guide covers both WriteShop I and II. So, one teacher's guide, 2 levels. It's tab divided, so it's really easy for you to find the sections that you need. There's an introduction that basically is going to walk you through what do you do to teach a lesson, how long does it take. So just some things to help you. We've got material lists. Here's the schedule. And it's going to be broken down really nicely for you. It's a 2-week schedule per lesson. And during the first week, you are going to be teaching writing like directly to your kids on the first 2 days. And then the rest of the time, they're going to work independently if they are able. Now, I say that because Ben was not able. Ben had to work closely with me because he really struggled. So we had to be together. And if your children are like that, just know that that's part of the process, moms. There are some kids who need more time, some subjects that need more attention. And with your teens, they still need your participation, they need your feedback, your input, they need to know you care about what they write, they need you not to put things on the back burner when they hand you a paper and return it to them in 3 weeks. They need immediate, within a day or 2 feedback. And this guide keeps you on track. So you've got teaching days, pre-writing activities, practice paragraph, I'll talk about that. Then the student does his or her own brainstorming, writes a rough draft, which we call a sloppy copy. The next week, they self-edit and revise using a really handy objective checklist. They give it to you after they've written their revision. They have a break from writing. You've got a day or 2 to use your teacher checklist. Again, very objective, not scary. And then the next day you give it back to them and they write a final draft based on your suggestions and the things that you found that needed to be tweaked in their assignment, okay? So a schedule is super helpful for keeping you on track and also for spreading the assignments out over time so they are not piling up like a train wreck at the end of the week or the next week, realizing they haven't done any of their writing. So this keeps everybody on track, and that's part of your job as moms and dads, is to train your kids to be self-disciplined. And giving them a schedule and holding them accountable to the schedule is part of your job in raising up responsible students. So don't just give them the book or give them the schedule and say, okay, now you're on your own, and then you don't check back in with them. You need to be aware of the process. My girls were super motivated and self-directed, and they didn't need a lot of attention from me. And it was really easy to forget about them and focus everything on Ben. But I had to remember I was still responsible for homeschooling these girls, and as responsible as they were, they needed my time and attention. So I had to make sure to check their work at the end of the day, have a powwow if there's anything we needed to discuss, and if there was something that actually required our time together, a teaching moment, those had to be scheduled in and planned throughout the day. The same thing is going to be true with your writing. Okay, so you've got the teacher's manual with all these great sections. You've got lesson plans, addressing errors lesson by lesson. This tells you specific things to look for, specific mistakes your kids might make on a given lesson. Not just general stuff, but when they are describing a person, these kinds of mistakes might crop up in their writing. When they are writing a personal narrative, look for these things. When they're writing an essay, an opinion essay, these kinds of things may appear in their writing. That is super helpful for you. Another section that parents love is positive and encouraging comments. How many times have you looked at anything your kids have done for you and thought, I cannot think of one good thing to say about this? And yet, if you don't, then they will think you are always just looking for the mistakes. So this gives you pages of ideas of things you can say that are positive and encouraging, but that can also pull them along, you know, and there are some exhortations. It's not just all everything is a great job, but it's how do I tell them to fix something without crushing their spirits? So this is a really valuable tool for you to have as parents. In the back, we have grading keys for the skill builders, which are like a grammar exercise that shows up in every lesson. And we also have keys for the pre-writing activities, and then an appendix with lots of extra things that you can do with your kids. So, very valuable to have the teacher's manual. The student book will contain all of their lesson instructions, their worksheets, their pre-writing activities, if they're not done orally. That's the other thing, is in your teacher's manual, in the lesson plans, this is where you'll have instructions to the activities that are not in the student book. Unlike our junior and primary levels where everything is in the teacher's manual, there's a lot in the student book for them. There's a lot of instruction. For instance, this is their lesson on describing a food, okay? So the introduction talks to them about the importance of mouth-watering description and choosing the right words to describe a food, and how magazine ads and restaurant menus entice you with their words and their descriptions, okay? Then it gives them about a dozen different kinds of foods that make great topics for this assignment, because they share the commonality of having a variety of textures, smells, tastes, appearance. So not just describing a bowl of white rice, because there's not a whole lot to say about that, but describing something where rice maybe is a component, like a stuffed burrito where it has beans and cheese and rice and salsa. It's spicy, it's cool with the sour cream and the guacamole. It's tangy from the salsa. It's spicy from the seasonings and the chilies. It has the texture of the tortilla, the texture of rice, of corn, or whatever. It's got different smells. It plays differently on the tongue. So that is a great food to describe. A pizza, a cinnamon roll, things that have multiple things about them that make it interesting. So your kids get the guidance in their student book to do that. They have instructions, but there are some things that are not in your student book that are in your teacher's manual. For instance, in lesson 1, when we first start teaching them about concrete writing, okay, so there is a concrete writing worksheet in here, but the instructions for it are in your teacher's manual because you're going to be walking them through that activity. In another lesson, there is a, well, I won't hunt for it now, but there's a picture of a boat in the water sailing toward an island, and there's a lot kind of going on, and it's a lesson on prepositions. So your student gets the instructions from you based on the picture, and then they have to do all kinds of things with their prepositions, and this is practicing for learning to use prepositional phrase sentence starters in their compositions. So that's why I keep referring to the teacher's manual. It's not just schedules and answer keys, but it also has activities and guidance and tips and direction so that you can set your kids on the right course. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So let's just talk in general. I've shown you what the books look like. Let's talk about what WriteShop I and II are. So I mentioned that they're for your teens, junior high and high school. because by this time they get to this level, you can teach multiple kids together and they can be grades apart. When they're younger, we talk to you about teaching kids together, like, can I teach my 4th and 5th grader together? Almost always yes. Can I teach my kindergarten and 3rd or 4th grader together? Probably not, because their cognitive development is too different to put them in the same program. But by the time they hit 12, some of these things are just pretty universal. And does it cover grammar and writing? There is some grammar in it. So I mentioned the prepositional phrases. We teach them about appositives, how to use similes, how to use participial phrases, present and past, how to use paired adjectives. We talk about the difference between confusing words like it's with and without apostrophe. So those are the kinds of things we teach them, teaching them grammar in the context of their writing. So you're not teaching them grammar in a vacuum. You're teaching it as part of the lesson. They do the activities, they apply it to their writing, and from that point on, that new skill is going to show up in all appropriate future lessons. So that it's not a full grammar program. Most parents still want a grammar program to go along with WriteShop, and it doesn't matter which one you choose. But with my kids, I only did grammar. I don't know. I probably did formal grammar 4 times in all the years we homeschooled. Like late elementary twice, junior high once, and early to mid-high school once, just to catch stuff that they've missed. You don't have to do grammar every year, or if you have a grammar program that you like but it's kind of heavy on exercises, do half the exercises or spread it out over time. You don't have to do it every year. Okay, so back to WriteShop. So junior high and high school, you can teach them together. I was saying in the younger ages it's harder, but by the time they get to this point, what you're doing is you're teaching them the basic components of good writing, which is a solid sentence and a solid paragraph, and then they go from there. So we spend time in the early lessons making sure that all the kids, no matter whether they're reluctant or motivated, advanced, struggling, there are ways that they need to kind of get their act together. So in the early lessons, well, I don't want to digress. I just want to say, yes, you can teach a 7th grader and a 10th grader together in WriteShop I. By the time they get to be in 10th grade, they may be on the cusp between 1 and 2. And we have a placement quiz on our website, and maybe Misty can post there you look at you, way ahead of me. Okay, so we've got the placement quiz there, and that will help you determine where to put your kiddos. It is possible that your high schoolers will have aged out of WriteShop. We only go to the 5-paragraph essay at the end of WriteShop II. This is where we introduce opinion essays, that describe and define, letter to the editor, your persuasive kind of writing, and compare and contrast essays. And we also have a unit on timed essays in WriteShop II. But we don't go any further than the 5-paragraph essay. And if your student has mastered that, they may be ready to go on. But some kids can sort of write a 5-paragraph essay, but they repeat themselves, they don't stay on track, they don't know how to build it up with details and facts to make it substantial. And that is something that they will learn in WriteShop II. So even if you say, well, my child has had 5-paragraph writing. 5-paragraph writing is just a structure, because once they've accomplished that, they need to break out of that mold and just write without thinking, I've got an introductory paragraph, a closing paragraph, and 3 middle paragraphs, because that's not real life writing. That is the writing that gets them going by helping them know how to start a paragraph, how to use transition words between paragraphs and between thoughts, how to develop details and use examples and facts and logic and all these things to build a substantial paragraph and essay. But once they have the building blocks of a basic essay, then they are able to keep going and write a stronger, longer, more substantial essay than even the one that they've done in their WriteShop lessons. So essay writing is not one and done. It is not. Essay writing will follow them all through their education years. So if they are just finishing high school, they will still have essays all through high school. If they decide to go on to community college or four-year college, they will need to have a solid grasp of essay writing and to be able to skip remedial writing when they get to the university or to the college. Why waste those credits on remedial writing when you can get them off to a really great start if you are working with them now? Okay, so what does WriteShop do for your kids? First of all, it's going to develop competent, confident writers. They are going to have the skills they need to feel equipped to do the writing. It's going to take the fear and the terror out of writing for them. It's going to take away the fear of the blank page because they will always have something that they can write about. They will be guided through each step, the brainstorming step by step. It's not just here, write down some ideas that are in your head and now turn them into a story. That is just not helpful, but it's common. And so what we want to do is encourage you to help your kids with more useful tools that they can tuck away in their tool belts. One of the things we teach the kids is to write concretely. This means learning to use stronger vocabulary words. So how do we do this? We eliminate those vague and pesky to-be words early on in their writing. So beginning in the second lesson, they can only use a certain number of to-be words: is, am, are, was, were, be, being, and been. Those are passive and they don't add description or action or interest to their writing. It's not that we never use them. They're a normal and intentional part of our writing, but they're lazy. And if they don't have to be there, we want to teach the children how to get rid of them. So 2 things happen early on in WriteShop. One is we start limiting the number of to-be words they can use. And 2, we start teaching them sentence variations. As they learn sentence variations and they learn to start a sentence in new ways, beginning a sentence with paired adjectives, beginning a sentence with a prepositional phrase, using subordinate conjunctions, all of these things help them restructure a subject-verb sentence so they can get rid of to-be words. So that is one of our early on goals, and it never stops all through WriteShop 1. And then about partway through WriteShop 2, we start to kind of lift the lid off and give them more freedom. It's like, okay, now you know the basics of this. You know that too many to-be words, not good. But we're not going to keep counting to-be words at this point. It becomes unreasonable and unrealistic to count to-be words when you're taking a college essay class, you know. But they have become aware through 16 lessons and revisions in WriteShop 1 and now 14 lessons in WriteShop 2. They become aware and they begin to stop using these words. They also, like, I was really interested to notice my son would send me home some of his college papers just to, you know, get a little bit of feedback or show me what he's doing in his classes. And I would just look and think, wow, he's using sentence variations. And it was just really cool to see those things showing up naturally in his papers. And that's because the incremental nature of WriteShop is we learn it, we do it, we practice it, we do it again. And it just becomes second nature for your kids. So that's what's happening with the concreteness. We've got strong word choice. We teach them how to use a thesaurus so that they know how to find substitute words, because on their checklist, that's one of the things they have to look for, is they have to underline their repeated words in blue. So they take their colored pencil, they look for the repeated words. They have to find synonyms for some that are overused. Doesn't mean they can't ever repeat a word. It just means we don't want them to use 5 or 6 instances of the same word when there's some other really good ones that could take its place. So we teach them to use a thesaurus. We recommend the synonym finder if you like a print thesaurus, or they can get a good thesaurus app for their phone. And then it helps their writing to snap and pop and crackle because they're using more interesting words. And so one of the skill builders actually walks them through replacing vague words using a thesaurus. And not just picking any word, but they have to pick it in context. So the word good can mean so many things. It could be a good book, it could be a good meal, it could be a good day. But to use a synonym for that, you wouldn't be able to use the same synonym for each of those. And so they're learning to find replacement words that are not dull and boring. Okay, so we've got concreteness, conciseness. This is another thing we want to teach the kids. Remember I told you, you can use WriteShop with your struggling writers. You can use it with your advanced writers. When I was teaching WriteShop classes, there were years where I would have 7th to 11th graders maybe in the class. I'd have some 11th, 12th, even a 12th grader ones who just had hardly had any writing in their background. So they fit right in even with my, real advanced 7th graders. But I happened to have that particular year a couple of girls who were so wordy, but they already had a strong vocabulary. That was not an issue. They knew how to use their vocabulary, but they did not know how to condense their writing and how to write concisely. So one of the things that helps both reluctant learners and these rambling writers, who typically are girls, but not always, is the limits that we place on a paragraph length. So in the beginning, they're allowed to write a 5 to 7 sentence paragraph. That means to the struggling writer, I only have to write 5, 6 sentences. Okay? It's very freeing for the kid who's just like, eh. But then you got the rambler. So I had these 2 girls in my class, and Kaylee and Suzanne. I still remember them, and this was like 20 years ago. They would beg me, please, Mrs. Kautzer, can I have 8 sentences? Nope, sorry. You have to learn to say what you need to say in the space we've given you. It is such a stretch in challenging these more advanced kids to get rid of the verbosity, get rid of the extra words that don't need to be there, learning to combine sentences. There are lots of tools that you can teach kids, but basically the same assignment is meeting the needs of 2 completely different learners. So it's pretty awesome, and I'm amazed at how that works, but it really does. I talked about word choice, I talked about sentence variation, I talked about applied grammar skills. Let's talk now about the checklists for students and parents. One of the things that I hear from parents is, my kids don't want to edit their work. They think they already did it right the first time. Raise your hand if you have one of those kids. Hi, Mary. Yes, it's just hard because they don't see their mistakes. They don't want to see their mistakes. So how can we help them to do this and do it well and do it right? We have some really great checklists. And I'm going to give you an analogy. Let's say you're making chicken soup. So you've got, chicken on the bone with skin in there. You've got chunks of celery with leaves. You've got carrots. You've got onions, bits of skin. All kinds of stuff is going into the pot. You boil it. It simmers. Hours later, you come back and you're ready to strain it. First thing you do is you call your teenager in and you ask your teenager to take a slotted spoon or a small sieve and remove the big chunks from the soup. So there's a bowl, and into the bowl goes the chicken pieces and the limp vegetables and whatever little bits that can be gleaned. But there's still some floaty stuff in there, right? So then you take that pot and you pour it through a strainer into a clean pot, and it winnows out all the leftover bits. The little gristle, the little green floaty stuff, any little bone that might be still at the bottom of the pot, those all go into the sieve and get set aside. Then you're left with a clear pot of broth to use however you want. This is a perfect analogy to the editing process. Your kid comes in to this bowl, this pot of stock. That is his writing assignment. He is looking for the big things that he can find and fix. So he takes out the big chunks, which could be counting to be words, checking for repeated words, looking for vague words that can be substituted, making sure he has, let's say it's a narrative, he has a character, a setting, a place, character, setting, plot, and a passage of time. So those are all on the checklist. He makes sure they're present in his composition. Check, 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 those are done. Check, 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 I've taken the chicken out. Then he's got some grammatical things to look for, some stylistic things to look for. Did I start a sentence with paired adjectives? Do I have a simile? Check, check, check. Take out the celery, take out the limp onion. Okay, but there's still some things one of the questions on their checklist is, avoided awkward writing. So he says, yeah, I didn't. I checks that off. Or maybe I had a strong topic sentence. Yes, I had a strong topic sentence. Check. Little bone floating in the bottom of the pot. Nope. But he thinks he wrote a strong topic sentence. He doesn't see the awkwardness of his writing. That's where you come in. So you have a checklist. It is identical to the students except for voice. You're just looking, for the same criteria. So it's not a surprise. Oh, I've got stuff on my list that you didn't have on yours. Haha, I'm going to pull the fast one over on you. No, it's going to be the same stuff. So that's going to be really, really helpful for both of you, because what's happening? You've suddenly taken the, repelling magnets out of the issue. It's no longer me against you. It is now this objective checklist against your composition. So it makes the fight go out of writing more than if you just sit down with his writing and make comments without the benefit of anything objective to help him or her see that you really are looking for specific things that you need to have in the lesson. So that's what you're doing, is you are looking for the stuff your child missed, and that's what you will catch on your checklist. And at the very end, you'll have a rubric that you can use to grade with. And let me find one here to show you. Okay, so this is a student checklist. Of course, it's backwards, I'm so sorry, but it's broken up into sections. So we've got content, style, and mechanics. So this is looking for things that are specific to the content. So did the student write about the topic he was supposed to write about? Did he choose the elements? Do they all fit in? Are they, present in his composition? Then you could go through them here. The style will be things like the topic and closing sentence, the different sentence variations, the strong word choice, the conciseness, the concreteness. And then the grammar portion will, of course, be everything from the way the page is laid out, is the title in the right place, the name, the margins, the spacing, all of that, and to the grammar, the punctuation, and the spelling. So those are all part of it. Now, that's the student checklist, and this is the teacher checklist. It looks almost identical, except you have two columns, one where you mark if something was okay, and one if it needs improvement. So your child may see 4 checks and think you didn't like anything I wrote because, teenagers. But you are able to then go back and say, hey, but back up, because look at all the stuff that I checked that you did well. I'm so proud of your efforts, and you really did a great job. Everybody has to have some editing done on their writing. That's just a part of writing. And so you're able to give them tips. You use your positive and encouraging comments. You can make comments on their paper directly, and you can also make comments in their on their checklist. So here's the thing. There's always going to be an element or 2 or 5 about writing that is subjective. It's a guess. It's a judgment call as to whether it's a good topic sentence or a strong conclusion, or there'll just be things that you need to guess at or do your best at. But there will be many, many things on those checklists that are actually measurable and quantifiable. So if you are a math science mom and writing is not in your wheelhouse, then this is going to be super helpful for you, because it's going to give you the encouragement that you need to be able to feel like you're not failing your kids, you're not being too hard on them, you're not being too easy on them, you don't have to guess at grades, you don't have to judge by your feelings, you don't have to grade or edit with, like, oh, I'm PMSing, and so then you're harder on your kids, or everything that could go wrong went wrong that day, or you can't stand one more day of being in the house with, lockdowns, and everybody's moods are frazzled, and, you're on your last nerve. That's not a fair way to edit and grade a paper. But if you have something objective, it takes so much of the stress off of you, and that's a beautiful thing. We also have composition evaluation forms in the in the student book. So that all the editing and grading forms are at the end of a lesson in the student book. This one is specific to compositions. You can assign points or half points. It's very accurate. And if you feel like something, you've given it gives you a ballpark, and you look at it and you say, well, they got a B+, but I really think it was more of an A-, but I don't want to just be easy on them. So how am I going to do this? You can look back and say, okay, did I really need to take a full point for this? And you can say, well, yeah, I really do. I really do need to take that. Okay, is there anything else? And you may at the end go, well, it's still a B+. Or you may have found something that you thought, yeah, I really could just take a half point instead of a full point on that, and that's the A-. But that, again, becomes your judgment call after you've done all the objective stuff that you can do. So, and I want to encourage you in this. Even if you only catch half the stuff on their checklists, because really, this is just hard for you. If you only catch half the stuff on their checklists, you are going to be so far ahead of the game, and your kids' writing will improve. You don't have to get it all. You don't. And if they're reluctant and struggling, you don't want to find it all at the very beginning while they're just getting used to this. So it helps you to be able to feel like, okay, this is doable. So there you've got your checklist. You've got all kinds of different options of good things that you can do when you're teaching your kids in terms of the kinds of writing. So in WriteShop I, there are 3 different units. We have descriptive writing, informative writing, which is expository, and narrative writing. In the descriptive writing unit, they will describe an object, a pet, a food, a person, a place, a season. There are many options for them. And why do we do so much descriptive writing? Because for some of the kids, it is not their favorite. When we get to the expository writing, it's like, yay! They still have to be descriptive, but that's what we've been building the foundation of in the earlier lessons. So we've got descriptive writing, informative writing, narrative writing, persuasive writing, and essay writing. The essay writing happens in WriteShop II, along with advanced descriptive narration, point of view, narrative voice. And so that's something that you'll be able to look forward to as you go on through the levels. In the expository writing, in WriteShop I, they'll be doing things like a short report, a newspaper article, a how-to paragraph, and then narratives give them all kinds of writing experiences. So it will be really good for them to be able to keep going with point of view, narrative voice, learning about omniscience, limited omniscience, and so forth. Each activity in WriteShop I has a purpose. We have pre-writing. Pre-writing is a warm-up. It gets their juices flowing, gets them feeling creative, kind of loosens the cobwebs and gets them ready to start doing some writing later on. So we've got, pre-writing games could be writing prompts, sentence building games, other kinds of word games to do that. And those are in your teacher's manual. And then we take them through the writing process where they will be learning to write, to brainstorm, to write, to edit, to write a final draft, and then to receive, to write a revision, receive comments and feedback from you, and then write a final draft. So in your course of your writing, you're going to be teaching them with a practice paragraph that's done kind of orally on a board. You're modeling for them. And then you'll set them off to writing independently if they're able to. So that is the wrap-up, the overview of WriteShop. It gives you an idea of the program and what we teach, what we cover. It is not a complete writing program that will take them through the end of high school. There is no research paper, there is no responding to literature, no business letters. Those are things that you can pick up in other writing programs, but this will give them the very foundations of the writing they will need to do any other writing that comes their way. We know of many families whose kids have done nothing but WriteShop I and II and gone straight into college and done great. So even if you are getting a late start with your older high schoolers, that's okay. You can find us at writeshop.com.